We're just in the middle of practicing for a parade. Thank you.
Highlanders were over in India, and while they were there they used these same types of rifles to hunt elephants. So if it could kill an elephant, you can only imagine what they could do to a person. Very, very deadly weapons. So he'll come over and show you what one of those rounds looks like. We reuse these brass cartridges, so sometimes they are different lengths just because we have to file off the end when it curves in, but they're all made the exact same way. They are .577 caliber, so about 14 millimeters in diameter, about a centimeter and a half. And those were even massive compared to 1860s standards. The reason they're so big is because back when these Snider Enfields were still pattern 53s, you need a larger diameter barrel in order to get all of that ammunition and black powder down the muzzle of the gun. And so when they converted them over to Snider Enfields, instead of replacing the entire barrel, which would have been a bit more expensive, they just kept that same barrel that the gun came with and then made bigger, larger rounds in order to accommodate the size.
Going into the ammo bunker. Going down into the defensive ditch.
Historically though, this was fired at several points throughout the day. They've been firing it for about 200 years or so now, and at the start it was created, or I guess they started the tradition of firing it because most people wouldn't have access to watches or clocks back in those days. They were very, very expensive, and so to make sure that people weren't going to be late for their shifts or their job rotations or, what is it called in English, curfews, they would fire the gun several times throughout the day. These days we keep it around only for that noon gun. Most people have clocks, and so they don't really need a gun to tell them what time it was. But historically it was very, very important. Even for the ships coming into port, they would need to redo their clocks every time they arrived in a new spot so that they could use that precise time to do all the calculations they needed to chart their course through the ocean. And so it wasn't only useful for the soldiers or the people in the city, but for anyone who would be coming around in this area. There are, of course, town clocks like the one at the base of the hill, but those can't necessarily be heard outside in the harbor the way that a gun can. And so it was crucial to have something like this. And you see signal guns in lots of different places around the world. This is a 12-pound smoothbore muzzle loader, which, to break that down a bit, means that it takes a 12-pound cannonball. You can see that marked on the sort of cart that it's on to tell you what size cannonball you need. The smoothbore is an older style of gun that was being created prior to the 1850s, 1860s. At that point, rifling was much, much easier to create on a large scale, much more economical. And so because those new rifled guns that were being created were much more accurate and had a much longer range, they really stopped using the smoothbore guns as much. It's useful to keep around because you've got a greater variety of things you can fire out of it, and it's also a bit easier to use as a signal gun. But for the most part, the guns that they wanted to defend us were those other rifled guns instead. Finally, the muzzle loader part means that it is loaded through the front of the gun here. So there's a cover on it that smells a little bit like black powder if anybody would like to take a whiff. But basically you take your powder charge, you push it all the way to the back of the gun with a long wooden rod. If you want to put in a cannonball, you put it in after the powder charge, and then you put your fuse, please move, you put your fuse in this vent right here at the back. And so that is what you would light to set off the gun there. Fortunately, folks, that brings us to the end of the guided tour, but there's still plenty of stuff to see. There's a lot of historic rooms you can check out. We have the guard room right next to the main entrance here. Over in that corner where we left the powder magazine is the school room. Right below this staircase here is the orderly room and tailor shop. And then at the far end of the Cavalier on the ground floor is one of the barrack rooms for the soldiers.
All sentries going to state your orders.
Sentries state your orders. Take charge of all government property within range of this post. All persons of respectable appearance may be admitted without a pass by signing their name in the visitor's book. Pay compliments to all officers of the Army and Navy according to their rank. Leave your fronts to the east so your beak extends 15 paces to your proper rear. Sentries! Pass! Shoulder!
Spinning around is to make sure that there's always someone facing the harbor and protecting Halifax. Right now, the new sentries pretty much
On the right. Make sure taking the right amount of paces on Southfield. Any paces. I will!
All right, I'm outside the Citadel, and look what I spy. A little autonomous mower. It's tackling that hill pretty well.